Greetings. Welcome to KPFA Staff Candidate Forum for the 2021 delegate elections, where you will hear from and have the opportunity to ask questions to various candidates. I am Renee Peñalosa, the National Election Supervisor and Moderator. The purpose of this forum is to give you an opportunity to make an informed decision when casting your vote. After candidates present themselves, we will take your questions and we invite you. Okay, I'm going to cut that out. You know what? That's okay. I'm going to cut from that. The order of candidates was determined by a random sequence generator from random.org. Candidates now each have 3 minutes to present themselves. Please note that all viewpoints presented are those of the participants and do not reflect the position of the Pacifica Foundation or KPFA. We will begin with Sherry Gendelman. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm Sherry Gendelman. I am a staff candidate. I have a show called Sunday Classics on the station Sunday mornings from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, previously hosted by Larry Bensky, and for 40 years hosted, approximately 40 years, by Mary Berg. I have been associated with KPFA since 1982 or 3, I would say. I was then the executive director of the San Francisco Gray Panthers and was interviewed and utilized the station for every event that the Gray Panthers or action that they were involved in during the war, the struggle against the wars in Central America. Prior to that, I was a civil rights attorney and district counsel for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Subsequent to the Gray Panthers, I went to work and live in India and then Madras and in Calcutta for nearly 5 years, returning to the States in 1992 and resuming my association with KPFA in the late 90s. And at the turn of the century, I was on the local advisory board and chair of the local advisory board, and was one of the plaintiffs in the 3 lawsuits brought to attempt to oust the people who we then identified as members of the Democratic Party or other centrist and conservative Christian radio people who attempted to take over the station. I was one of the plaintiffs in the 3 lawsuits. After we were successful in our lawsuits, I returned to the practice of law as a criminal defense attorney, remained on the local station board after the bylaws were written, was elected to the national board and was the chair of the national board for 2 separate years, and the chair of the local station board. I lobbied at the time in 2000 for a board that initiated a national board that would have requirements for people to have media and radio experience, to have experience in raising funds for the station, and to have other experience that the network and station would benefit from. I am determined to do everything I can to protect KPFA and to attempt to restore it to its position of respect within the media community.
Thank you, Sherry Gendelman. Anthony Fest, you have 3 minutes.
Hey, thank you, and hello, fellow staff members. I'm Anthony Fest, and I'm running for a local station board seat. I started at KPFA with the news class in 1994. Then I started hosting the Sunday news on alternate weeks from 1996 to 2016, and was also on the morning mix. What I'm doing now is the technical production for Project Censored Show and the Poor News segment on Hard Knock. Oh, the things that make KPFA special to me are the eclectic programming, the community base, and the peace and justice orientation. And of course, part of the community base is our system of elected local station boards. I'm running for a seat on the local station board because I'd like to see KPFA thrive and adapt to the new media world we're living in now. A serious problem I see is that KPFA seems to be almost standing still. There's very little innovation in programming, and many communities and populations are still unrepresented or underrepresented on the air. There ought to be programs by and for youth, by and for seniors, by and for LGBT people. But for some reason, there aren't. And standing still is not the way to succeed today when people have so many media choices, and many people don't need or seem to be interested in radio at all. So we have no choice but to innovate. And one important change I'd like to see would be the restoration of the democratic decision-making about programs. Programming is why we exist, and those decisions are, in my opinion, too important to be made behind closed doors by one or two managers. So we need to bring back a program council. I don't think programs should go on for decades without being reviewed, but if a program is taken off the air, it ought to be done with courtesy to the programmers. And we've not had that in recent years. Some shows have been taken off KPFA by management with no explanation and no prior notice. I find that a disgraceful lack of respect for people who contribute their time and effort to KPFA. So we need a programmer's bill of rights. And even though KPFA is in the communication business, there's not enough communication going on within KPFA. Without staff meetings or reports to the listener, that kind of leaves the LSB as the default option to be the place where listeners and staff can be heard. And they need to be made welcome at the LSB and not told to keep their comments to 2 minutes. So please vote for me, Anthony Fest, and also for Frank Sterling and Ann Garrison. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony Fest. Ann Garrison, you have 3 minutes. You're muted.
It actually says she's not muted, but there's no sound coming from your speaker. Is your headphone thing plugged in? I guess you're hearing us.
Huh, strange.
Oh.
Anne, yeah, we'll give her a few seconds.
By the way, Renee, is there a way we can mute ourselves when we're not speaking to make sure the other people have the cleanest sound? Because I don't see a mute option in the way the screen is set up right now.
I can mute you, Anthony.
There is a mute option on the lower left of your screen.
Yeah. Yeah, there should be a mute option for everybody.
You might have to adjust your view, Anthony, like speaker view, or you might be in super full screen. I muted you, Anthony, so I could ask you to unmute. Maybe you're not seeing it, so you might have to, adjust your screen. There you are.
There you
No,
go.
I saw that. I'm just puzzled by the white screen, which doesn't have some of the normal cues that a regular Zoom screen has.
Mine appears regular.
Oh, okay.
You
Ann,
might.
any luck? How you doing, Ann? Any luck?
We can't hear you.
Still nothing. Maybe mic settings. If you go to your settings and go to input and then look for your mic, and you could select, search your settings for input, and then you'll probably want to select your built-in laptop or computer mic. Otherwise, if you had your headpiece plugged in again, you might want to search for whatever that's called for that input.
You can also call in with your phone. That might be the best way.
She's going to call. You might want to give her the number.
Yeah, she has it. It's all in that email, but I can tell her, actually. I can tell it to her right now.
You can maybe type it in the chat, or
yeah, I will. I'll type it in the chat. Yeah.
But yes, just for anybody else, it's in the email, the phone number to dial in on your cell phone.
Yeah. Yep, it is. Let's see. Here we go. Wait, there's like so many numbers. Oh gosh, which one to give her? One Tap Mobile, that's probably the one to do.
Okay, I just got a little pop-up from Ann saying, let somebody else go first while she figures this out.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and I'll send her this, let me just send this to her.
Yeah, I obviously don't need to call in, but I'm on this screen and my email is somewhere else. I'd have to.
Yeah, okay, I sent it in the chat here, one of the numbers to call. There are various numbers. Okay, yeah, so we will proceed with, let me see who's on the list. Okay, Chris Corey, you have 3 minutes. Oh, wait.
It sounds like Ann is available.
Oh,
I see Ann.
Yeah, I know what was going on. I had Bluetooth turned on. I use Bluetooth headsets a lot, and so it's kind of my default, and I forgot that I needed to do something about that.
okay. Okay, and Garrison, you have 3 minutes.
Okay. I'm particularly interested in representing the unpaid staff whom I think often get short shrift at KPFA. And well, I guess I should say first that I have been reporting weekend news for 11 or 12 years now. And I also co-produce and co-host a show called COVID, Race, and Democracy that is aired on all of the other stations. That is a collaboration between producers across the network. Now, I want to say something, especially about the news report. I'm not news reporters. I get flustered with all that trouble with my sound. I would like to say something particularly about the music programmers. In my news and public affairs reporting, I spend a lot of time dwelling on the industrial scale degradation and destruction of human beings, particularly in Africa. I get a little too wrapped up in that. And so I'm always glad when the music programmers are there for me. And I was particularly upset when Dean Suzuki, who had a unique show playing contemporary music, was just dismissed without a bayou leave after many, many years. And I'd like to see a program council, and I'm just very doubtful that show was dismissed and replaced by a Motown dance party, a syndicated Motown dance party. And I really doubt that a program council would have made that decision. So I would like to see a program council. I think the program council is the interface with the community. It's one of the interfaces with the community. It's what makes it community radio. Also, with regard to the LSB, I think there's a constant attempt to disempower the LSBs. And that's what the New Day bylaws would have done. I know the majority of staff voted for them, but I'm going to go ahead and say that I voted against them. And one thing that upset me after that, there was a lot of disagreement about the way staff and listener votes were counted. But I read somewhere in some of the arguments against the outcome that people who just come in once in a while to volunteer, to help out, we're getting too much time. We're getting too much weight to their vote. And, all these music programmers have come in week after week after week for years, giving their time. And a lot of public affairs programmers too. Okay.
We will continue this discussion, I'm sure. Chris Corey, you have 3 minutes.
Renee, if Ann has some closing remarks that she'd like to make, I don't have any prepared statements. I don't think I'll take more than 2 minutes. So, Ann, did you have anything more that you wanted to add?
Well, I just want to reinforce what Anthony said about how KPFA has been and all of Pacifica have been standing still as the web transformed media. And we really have to think about that.
Okay, you can deduct 30 seconds from my time, Renee, if you'd like. As I said, sorry, you want to reset the timer?
I did. Oh,
There
for
you go.
some reason, yeah, there you are. Huh.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending the forum. This is Chris Corey. I've been on the LSB since 2017 when I was elected as a second runner-up in that election. I wasn't seated until February of that year, so I missed out on the NFC, not the NFC, but the PNB elections that year. I've been a listener to KPFA since the 1980s. And at the request of the program director at the time, I was asked to run for the LSB. That would have been 2016 as a listener delegate at that time. And I think Ahmad Anderson was actually in front of me in the runner-up status. After I was seated, I became treasurer of KPFA. So I retained that seat for a year until the following year when I was elected to the PNB and seated on the NFC. The following year, I became chair of that committee. And currently I am chair of the coordinating committee, and I am also on the National Finance Committee and Strategic Planning. About a year ago, I started producing a music show, midnight to 2 a.m. on Tuesdays. It's called A Box of Toys. I'm co-producing that, and it was a struggle at first. I have no radio experience at all. I just have an extensive background in music. And so it was interesting getting used to the airwaves and trying to figure out how to not say and to iron out my show to the point where I could actually stand listening to myself. But I feel pretty comfortable on the mic now, and I'm happy to have been given this opportunity by KPFA to share my knowledge of music, and it's been a real pleasure. I think Pacifica has some major challenges in the finance department, which is my primary area, as you could probably guess from my chair assignment and my continual position on the NFC. And I think there are some significant challenges ahead of us, particularly with KPFK and WBAI. And that's the area of expertise that I would like to bring to the LSB and hopefully to the PNB, should you so honor me with my selection. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I just want to say that somehow one of my profiles got disconnected, which is why you're no longer seeing the clock. But I will give the heads up if people go beyond time. But you didn't actually. You had another 30 seconds.
Wow, that seemed like a lot longer. That's what I mean about. That's what I mean about radio, is that I really even the time part of it eludes me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Corey, Stephen Thomas, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, and I don't see the timer, so hopefully I won't run over. I'm the KPFA volunteer electrician. I've been listening to KPFA for a long time. I've done lights out in the parking lot, most recently making sure the circuits for the new equipment in the broadcast studios were up to date. I've mostly been a working class electrician. I had a 10-year career in the stock market in which I wrote research reports and analyzed balance sheets and was working with institutional investors. I want to see KPFA survive and thrive. And KPFA has the most members and is the most successful of all the stations. I'm really concerned that the Pacifica National Board is controlled pretty much by WBAI, and KPFA has no seats as chairman on any of the committees. And there was a really irresponsible loan taken out, pledging KPFA's assets as collateral. And as far as I know, I've seen nothing about any responsible plan to pay that back. WBAI is, according to my knowledge, still planning at running a deficit this year. So there's certainly room for improvements at KPFA. They're not completely derelict in reaching out to new technologies, but the stations that have community program councils aren't the ones that are making money. KPFA is making money and contributing more to the national board than anybody else. And I'm open-minded about all kinds of things and I'm willing to work with people, but it's hard to argue with success. I want the accountability to be with the people who took out the irresponsible loan against KPFA's assets. That's why I voted for the bylaws change. It would have changed things because the national board has been kind of dysfunctional, from what I gather, for a long time. And it would have actually made the whole thing more accountable if you understand what they actually meant and implied. That said, I really care about KPFA. I want to see it survive and thrive. I will continue to volunteer, and I love the station and can't imagine anything without it. And if it got sold, there goes the goose that is laying the golden egg for the rest of the network. And I think that kind of wraps it up.
Thank you, Stephen Thomas. Frank Sterling, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Hey, everyone, fellow staff people I haven't seen in 2 years. This is Frank Sterling, known on the air as Free Will and Franklin. And I'm again running for the staff representative to the KPFA station, local station board. I did 2 terms in the past on the LSB, and I have served the past 3 years on the board. And I've been trying to be a consistent voice fighting for community representation on the airwaves and for the rights of paid and unpaid staff. I've been a part of KPFA now for 16 years, and I came in through the KPFA First Voice apprenticeship program. And of course, like most people on the board here, I feel like that one of our most pressing issues is that loan that the last gentleman just spoke of, a loan that actually saved us and saved part of the network. It's looming, like he said, over KPFA and KPFK, the equipment, the Pacifica archives. So we must make sure of a plan to repay that loan. There's many ideas out there. Some are actually being implemented, like using percentages of bequests that come in that should go towards the loan. I would also like to propose that every fund drive we do, we take one random day and put that in a fund for the loan. There's lots of ideas, but not a lot's happening. I do know that the loan has been extended. We have till late 2022, as far as I know, or is it April? A little unsure on that, but we did get it extended. I'd also like to see an emergency fund drive where we share our story about, how we got to that point. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be terrible. It could be, a statement of some facts, how we paid off that Empire State loan, what led to us getting that loan. And that contract in the first place. And then ask for funds to get us out of that loan. I think the listeners would be supportive of that. I'd like to see a text-based donation system where people can give anytime by texting give or whatever you want to say to KPFA. We could promote texting on a regular basis. If you hear a show you just enjoyed, give $5 right now. Text $5 to KPFA on, it'd be that easy. I'm a firm believer in keeping the network together. Yes, as we've heard, we have financial and other pressing issues at some of our other stations, and everything's not hunky-dory here at KPFA, I'd say, as a 16-year staff person. But I believe in helping get it together while working as a team will keep us stronger than trying to shut hurting stations down. The network can play a very important role in shaping the narrative right now that we're going through with the Trump era and all that. And I think we need to stick together as a network for the future. Other important issues I feel are going more multimedia and utilizing the website to stream audio as well as video. That has actually come on recently, but in the past, I've been streaming for almost 10 years. East Bay Conversations on biotechnology. I streamed from Creech Air Force Base. I know I'm running out of time. I can see my own timer here. But all these streams that I did, with the exception of Block the Boat, were denied airtime on KPFA.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you, Frank Sterling. So since we don't have any staff members other than candidates here, I'm going to change the format so that you all now have the opportunity to ask each other questions. And we'll yeah, we'll start with back at the top with Sherry. What question do you have for everybody? I think you might be muted.
You are correct. No, thank you. I would like everyone to respond to how do you view your responsibilities and obligations as a member of the KPFA local station board? Is your responsibility to KPFA, which is the most successful, the largest membership, the most financially secure station in the network? Or do you feel that your loyalties, responsibilities, and talent should be directed elsewhere?
Thank you. And Anthony, you have, let's see, a minute and a half to respond.
Okay, interesting question. I guess some of us insiders may remember this. Was it perhaps 2.5 years ago or so? Someone from the state attorney general's office came and lectured, I think it was the PNB, and told them, among other things, their responsibilities were to the foundation, not to their friends, not even to their particular station. Their responsibility legally lay with the foundation as a whole. As a local board member and someone who knows KPFA much better than any of the other stations, I don't know very much about the other stations. Naturally, my focus is to be on KPFA. I don't want to denigrate other stations and say, well, we're better than they are. You know, they're freeloading, et cetera, If other stations are having problems, it's mostly going to be up to them to solve them, because they know their audiences and they know their staff and they know their situations. We don't, but to the extent that we can offer support, we should. Obviously, that doesn't entail shutting down another station that, as WBAI was shut down in late 2019. That should not happen. That's an ugly reminder of what happened to KPFA in 1999. So yeah, to sum up, my responsibility as a local board member is to KPFA.
Thank you. And Garrison, you have 90 seconds. And I think you're muted.
Yeah, muted just so I wouldn't be making noise that interrupted anyone else. Of course, as Anthony said, my responsibility as a local board member would be primarily to KPFA. However, as a member of Pacifica's governance structure and both a listener and a programmer, I'm committed to Pacifica. And I don't want to see any of the other stations or their licenses sacrificed. I think there are more creative ways to think about that. Also, with regard to the debt has been refinanced, and it's been refinanced because, well, no, it's been extended. I don't think refinanced isn't the right word. It's been extended because the PNB managed to make all their payments consistently for a year. And if that continues, I'm sure that they will extend it again. Of course, it would be better to pay off the principal. There is a plan for paying off the principal, and this was agreed with the lender, that some percentage of bequests to any individual stations or the network be used to pay down the debt. Oh, I'm still okay. Okay.
You have 10 seconds, but
okay. Well, I listen to stations all around the network, and I appreciate so much the programming, and plenty of it on WBAI and WPFW.
thank you. And Chris Corey, you have 90 seconds.
Right. So this is a bit of a conflicting question for me, particularly because I'm currently serving on the PNB. As a PNB delegate, my obligation is wholly to Pacifica. I certainly consider KPFA because I know the station better than any other station in the network. And if I'm not elected to the PNB again next year, then of course my obligation will be entirely to KPFA. But I try to look out for the network as a whole. I try to look out for all the stations equally. And that balanced approach has actually, meant that in some cases I've been put at odds with KPFA people. And so I kind of consider myself something of an outsider in this election, in that, even the quote slate, unquote, that I'm running with, some of those people are really not all that keen on me. I actually am sympathetic to the woes at WBAI, but my primary obligation is to Pacifica as a whole, and secondarily to KPFA. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Thomas, you have 90 seconds.
Well, Chris, I listen to your middle of the night show and enjoy it when I'm awake for it. And I ran for Congress in 2006 in a Democratic primary, so I learned a bit about politics and process. And I also care about the Pacifica Network, and that assets are being sold to pay debts, which I think is a huge mistake. And I think it would be better if the stations that aren't making money would look at what has been successful at KPFA and emulate that as a model and hopefully become more successful. Clearly, the whole Pacifica network is very important. As local station board, I pretty much listen to KPFA, although I have listened to some COVID race and democracy shows when they were played and thought, wow, that's really good. We should have a little more of that. So there's always room for improvement, but KPFA is successful and is the goose laying the golden egg for the rest of the network. And where KPFA has been successful and other stations have not, I think it would be good for the other stations to emulate KPFA's model. And I'm done.
Sorry, I was muted. I was muted this time. Thank you. Frank Sterling, you have 90 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like Chris. I'm for the network, and I've been on the KPFA board 6 years prior to my last 3 years serving. And yes, I want to help KPFA. I don't think they're mutually exclusive here. I think helping one helps the other. If we have a strong KPFA, we have a stronger network. And if we have a stronger network, we should have a stronger KPFA, WBAI, KPFT, KPFK. And if I missed the other one, I missed it. But you get where I'm going. I think we are stronger together. I mean, we talk about that all over the country. When disaster happens, everyone's got a Pacifica strong message about their city. It could be New York strong, whatever it is. So I think it's not mutually exclusive, and that, yes, I would work at KPFA stuff for KPFA, but I'm also on committees which work nationally and submit motions and stuff to the national board. So I appreciate the question, but I think they're one. KPFA is the Pacifica network. It's part of the Pacifica network, and we need to help our brothers and sister stations and become this KPFA across the country, with their own titles. So yeah, I agree that we should try to do what we can to help the other stations and follow KPFA's lead when possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Gendelman, I realize you can have the opportunity to respond to this since everybody has. Would you like 90 seconds to respond to your question, to present your position?
Sure. I just want to correct something. The Attorney General's office, the California Attorney General's office, addressed the Pacifica National Board, and what the Attorney General was addressing was the shoddy mismanagement of the financial resources of Pacifica and the manner that the business of a Pacifica Radio Network was being managed. And it was not about loyalty for stations or whatever. It was the misuse and the abuse of financial practices in the nonprofit industry. And the recommendations of the Attorney General, the California Attorney General's office to the PNB were immediately ignored by the entire PNB board or those in charge of responding and adjusting their practices to meet the recommendations of the Attorney General. I think that the Pacifica Radio Network is the only network with once progressive network with licenses in 5 of the 10 largest media markets. I will do everything to see that it is restored to its past glory. But I must say that my heart is with KPFA, who has a successful model which has consistently been ignored by the rest of the stations. I'm done. And you're on mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You were right on time and I can't believe it. Okay. And now we'll move on to Anthony Fest. What is your question for the candidates?
I hadn't quite thought of this format, but I guess a natural one would be, who should make programming decisions? Should it be one or two individuals in management, or should there be some kind of collective community selected group, like a program council, as we had for many years?
Thank you. And we'll go around as we did before in order. And Garrison, you have 90 seconds. I think you're muted.
Okay, I'm all together for a program council. That's one of the main reasons I'm running for the LSB. I think a program council is the interface with the community. It's what makes, or it's one of the main things that makes community radio. You know, I'm disturbed by decisions that have been made recently without any process at all. Particularly, as I said, Dean Suzuki's show, which was absolutely unique in that it played modern, highly composed music. And I was also upset about Twitwit Radio, which I thought was really funny, and all it has was a half-an-hour slot on Sunday evening when there aren't that many listeners. So yeah, I definitely think there should be a program council, and I would even go so far as to say that it should be a program council with some teeth. In the past, it's just been one that makes recommendations to the manager. I think it should actually be a program council with some teeth.
Thank you. Chris Corey, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. I've actually steered clear of this question my entire time on the PNB, and I can explain why. Probably 90% of the delegates at the local station boards have some interest in programming. That's what motivated them to join the LSBs in the first place. And probably half of them have some or considerable expertise in that area. So since I have neither, I mean, I'm interested in programming, otherwise I would have never run for my seat in the first place. I'm interested in what KPFA puts out, but I don't really have a feel for what makes stations successful in terms of programming. And I would rather leave it to those that actually have experience in that area. So as much as I would like to state an opinion on this, I've actually kind of avoided it and focused on the things that I do well. Like I say, I have an extensive background in music, so I know something about music programming, I guess. So maybe I should counsel WPFW or something, some station that is almost exclusively music. But the other area that I'm good at is finance. So I just try to stick to my little corner and let the programmers do what they do best. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Thomas, you have 90 seconds.
It's my understanding that programming is something that has a lot of little components to it. how much money they raise, there's community outreach, and why some programs get canceled. You know, maybe there ought to be more transparency about that. I kind of like some shows that no longer appear, but programs have to align with the goals of the station and help to raise money to support the station. And if some programs are canceled, maybe there should be more explanation. The stations that have listener program councils are not the ones that are the most successful stations. And something that KPFA is doing is they're doing right. And can there be improvements? Of course there can. I don't think a program council that's going to override management is necessarily the right way to do it, although certainly there should be some input, and perhaps a committee on the local station board could be an ear and a mouthpiece for that aspect of programming and bring it to management's attention. I'm done.
Thank you. Frank Sterling, you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, so I agree with the program council. I think that one or two people should not be the gatekeepers. I agree it should have some sort of teeth. And in fact, in the bylaws, I was looking for the section, but it talks about we are there to help ensure that KPFA and our stations are meeting the program and needs of our listeners. And I have examples like the March for Climate Jobs and Justice in San Francisco. That was the largest West Coast climate rally in the United States on the West Coast, and it was in San Francisco. Station management refused to break into Saturday daytime music programming to broadcast live from the event. They also refused to do it at the previous March for Climate, for Real Climate Leadership, back when Jerry Brown was the governor. And we had to broadcast ourselves as the apprenticeship program, the First Voice apprenticeship program where I work, and we streamed it online as an alternative source. Now, do I think that every protest should be streamed online? I don't, but I think that there should be consideration given to large rallies like that. Also, I just think that we need policies and procedures in place for, and something that I'm working on for shows that get cut, shows that are preempted, how programmers are educated, trained, and supported in technology, how they're evaluated. So this is stuff I'm working on in committee right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Gendelman, you have 90 seconds.
Let me unmute myself. I don't have too much to say. I would agree with the comments made by Chris Corey and by Stephen Thomas. And I just would emphasize the fact that I believe that KPFA programming has been, again, the most successful with the largest audience and has been the backbone of the network. I am not a trained media person. I know I'm drawn to the station because of the programming that exists. I think it has a variety of cultural programmings and public affairs and news shows that are cutting edge and head and shoulders above anything else available. And I rely on professional media people, clearly successful in the case of KPFA, to guide the station towards supporting the mission of Pacifica and delivering programming that has brought in the largest audience. And I'm done.
Thank you. And Anthony Fest, you have 90 seconds to answer your question.
Yeah, it's fun to answer one's own question. One thing I would note here, I'm not sure that the other Pacifica stations do have program councils. I'm fairly certain that WBAI does not, because I've seen emails from WBAI programmers making complaints very similar to what we have here. They say management preempted my show, or even management moved my show. Management took my show off the air without explanation, without prior notice. It seems the manager there is acting like it's all up to him and to no one else. So I think there's commonality there that needs correcting. I don't know about, I believe KPFT was the same. I don't think they had a program council because a lot of shows were suddenly moved or canceled, and it took the programmers by surprise. I don't think KPFK does either. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure about WPFW. I would point out that in the early 2000s, when we had a program council, and when it was rebuilding from the 1999 crisis, they approved a lot of programs, Pushing Limits, Voices of the Middle East, Women's Magazine, Education Today, Bay Native Circle, Apex Express. Wonderful burst of creativity. I mean, that's been nearly 20 years now, and most of those shows are still with us, and that's a good thing. But it's time to revive that program council.
Thank you. Thank you. And Garrison, what is your question for everybody? Hi.
Do you think money should be the primary measure of a program's success? That seems to be what I keep hearing.
Thank you. Chris Corey, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you.
Oh, he's back. Okay.
Yep, I'm back. Yeah, thank you. I actually, I don't know how we would measure that, candidly. I think stations need to have a mix of programming, some of which will reach a very limited audience. I would say that my own particular program probably reaches very few. But I think that these little carve-outs for minority programming are important, not only to the success of the station as a whole, but to the mission of Pacifica, which is to have a diversity of views and a diversity of programming. And so I already said that I wouldn't wade into this subject, but I do have a tendency to measure things in terms of dollars and cents. And I think that we need to have successful programs. Obviously, I mean, we can't have just the whole entire slate covered with niche programming. But I don't have any objection to having programs that have small audiences, and I don't think they should be measured that way.
Thank you. Stephen Thomas, you have 90 seconds.
Certainly, programming is about more than just money, but the station has to be successful. And during the prime hours when money can be raised, that's important. There are plenty of shows that I enjoy, like Joel's Jazz Thing in the Middle of the Night and Corey's show, that don't raise any money at all unless the hosts contribute, or I'm listening and I wake up and I contribute to help support the show. So certainly that's not the only metric. It's my understanding KPFA has lots of metrics for community outreach and all that stuff when they choose which programs are going on. During the pandemic, things have contracted and there aren't as many shows as there used to be. But as I said, I think a program council could be something that gives input to the local station board and be taken into consideration. But to take that out of control of management that has to run the station and has to raise money to stay on the air, I think would be a mistake.
Thank you. Frank Sterling, you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, obviously, no, money should not be the only determining factor. I agree with a lot of what Chris said. There's niche programming that is not going to have the chance to raise the funds that other shows that broadcast in prime time, 2 hours in some cases. Upfront has 2 hours to raise funds, and shows that are featured highly on the website and given a lot of support at the station. So I think that's just kind of the short answer. We need to take into consideration, how do we get the shows that aren't raising significant amounts of funds to raise a little bit more funds? And I think that's a conversation we need to have late night for Chris and other programmers. I think the text-based system would be great. And I think they can get a number of small donations just by donating $5. Text 5 to KPFA and you donate $5. People that are less likely to give, I think, will be more adept to texting in a small donation of $5 or $10 when they hear something that grips them at that moment. And we have a request for a text donation. If you heard something today that moved you or something that you listen to regularly, give $5 anytime. Doesn't have to be during the fund drive. So the bottom line for me, that answer to the question is no, money should not be the deciding factor. But of course, we need to raise funds, and we do it on the air. So another solution is some off-air fundraising, and we could talk about that another time.
Thank you. Sherry Gendelman, you have 90 seconds.
I agree with the remarks of Stephen and Chris. I think that money is not the determining factor, but I think that KPFA and its programming is the programming that I am most familiar with, has in its primetime hours the shows that have the largest audiences and therefore raise the most money. And I think that they have lots of niche programming. Some of the programs do not raise money, but because of the success of the larger audience shows, KPFA is able to have a mix of community-based shows, esoteric topics, and other shows because it has worked out a successful financial system where the heavy hitters do the lifting and therefore are able to fund shows that are somewhat more esoteric and of interest to a smaller group of people, but nonetheless are very high quality shows. So I agree with the remarks of Stephen and Chris. I'm done.
Thank you. Anthony Fest, you have 90 seconds.
Well, the answer to that question is hell no. Money is not the most important measure, especially of individual programs. I mean, the point of raising money is to support the mission so that the station can carry out its mission. The point of raising money is not to raise money. Otherwise, we'd simply be a commercial station and put on the shows which raise the most. One thing I think we ought to do is more experimentation to see what can garner more support. We're not even trying to do that now. They just plugged the morning shows into the afternoon as reruns. I think a more interesting approach and a more approach true to the mission would be to introduce some new programs. And there may be surprising successes. In LA, Roy of Hollywood, overnight talk show host, is a huge fundraiser. Don't agree with him on certain network matters, but he's been there a long time and he has a loyal audience of people who are up at night listening to his program. Maybe we should try that one night a week. I mean, there are many options and just need to be explored. Thanks.
Thank you. And Garrison, you have 90 seconds to answer your question.
Oh, to answer my own question.
Yes.
No, I don't think money should be the only measure of programming. And that even includes public affairs programming during prime time. I know that's when you need to raise money, but you could raise money with a lot of programming that was contrary to the mission. And a lot of people who have money, including the CIA, could call in to promote the programs and the public affairs points of view that they support. So I think it's a conversation that should be had. When I listen to LSB meetings, I hear over and over that this or that show is underperforming. And I just don't think that should be the only or necessarily the primary judge of success.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to Chris Corey. What is your question for everybody?
All right. As you all know, I've been primarily focusing on the money part of Pacifica for a long time. And I have to say that every year that I've been involved with the organization at this level, Pacifica has basically been losing money operationally. And by that, I mean that without some major bequests in my first couple of years and without the PPP funds in the last couple of years, Pacifica's bleeding about $1 million a year. My question is simply, if you were executive director, I realize that that'll be a lift for some of you that have been programming all this time. What would you do to fill that void? Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Thomas, you have 90 seconds. I think you might be muted. Stephen Thomas?
Hey,
Oh, there you are.
didn't know I was muted, so I'm unmuted. Chris's question is a good one. And although it's not all about money, that certainly is an issue. And Pacifica does, well, KPFA does a lot of outreach for its programming. And certainly we have to support shows that don't raise a lot of money. It's not all about money. The mission is about serving the community and allowing voices. And can that be improved? Yeah, of course, anything can be improved. But the station has to be viable. And so far, KPFA has been the most successful station in the Pacifica network. And the stations that aren't making money need to be helped along, and KPFA should do what it can to help those stations emulate KPFA's model, whether that means community outreach, having good. KPFA, as far as I know, is the only one with a full-time news department. Other stations could benefit from that and doing better in their home markets, and KPFA is an example of how to do that. And we should all work together to that end, because the whole network needs to survive, but especially in my view, KPFA, the original station, needs to be survived. That's the station that I listen to. So
Thank
that's
you.
my.
Frank Sterling, you have 90 seconds.
Yes, I'm elevated to ED. My dreams. No, I think I don't want to give away my own question because I got a question for us, but I think we have to grow our listenership. We have to figure out how do we get more people listening to our stations and therefore becoming future members, future contributors. And there's a lot of discussions on ways we can get more members, community outreach, more promotion, street teams, connecting with already established organizations with large memberships. So I can go into more detail on that because I want to talk about that on how do we raise funds? How do we grow our membership? And I think those two are inevitably, oops, sorry, I'm shaking my whole desk, are inevitably linked because listeners hopefully will donate. Hopefully they'll donate $25 at least and become members. And I think that's what I would focus on. I would focus on immediately trying to grow our membership and how to support our other stations that are struggling. And I would try to do it in a collaborative way, not the way that we shut down WBAI. We want to spread KPFA style stuff other places. Well, let's see how we can do it. You know, what do they need over there that we have that we can offer that that's going to be acceptable and open to them in a collaborative way. So I think forcing our way in is not the way to do it. I'm a collaborative person. I've seen a lot of bad behavior on the boards.
Thank you.
And I won't emulate that bad behavior. I will stay respectable. Thank you.
Sherry Gendelman, you have 90 seconds.
So I think that if I were executive director, I would look at what works and what doesn't work. During the pandemic and during the past 10 years, while Grace Aaron claimed that all public radio stations, nonprofits, have been hemorrhaging listeners, that's not actually true. stations like National Public Radio, which I don't want KPFA to emulate in any way, other than they were able to double and triple their audience over the last decade. And I think that the Pacifica stations should be doing that. KPFA did increase its memberships, though not as much as it should. I would certainly ask for media experts to analyze what worked and what doesn't work at KPFA, and why the Pacifica National Board has basically eviscerated the LA station, losing such stars as Ian Masters and Sonali Kohatkar, who have a huge following, had a huge audience, and from people I know in the Los Angeles area, they say they have just stopped listening to the hate speech and nonsense that is now spewing from the airwaves. I would definitely take charge and try to analyze what works and what doesn't. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you. Anthony Fest, you have 90 seconds.
One thing I would note is that KPFA is not gaining subscribers; it's losing them. We're, I think, generously counted. It's about 14,000 now. It used to be much higher. It used to be well into the 20s, and some people have said that way back when it was 30,000. So we've only got half of what we once had, even though the Bay Area population is getting larger and people can find us on the internet from anywhere in the world. So something's wrong. I don't pretend that I know the answer, but I suspect that we need to emphasize the things which set us apart from commercial radio and from NPR, uncompromising, peace and justice programming, and not just saying, well, the Republicans said this and the Democrats said that. I mean, if you want that, you can get that on NPR and commercial radio. So it's about subscribership. Subscribership will drive revenue, and we can't keep letting the subscribership drop and pretend there's no connection between programming and subscribership. I contend that what makes us unique is what will keep people loyal to us. Another thing to note is that I would wager KPFA spends more money than any other community radio station in the country. KBOO up in Portland spends about $900,000 a year. That's about a quarter of the KPFA budget.
Anne Garrison, you have 90 seconds. And I think you're muted.
Okay, could someone remind me what the question is?
Chris, do you
Was
want to, or Steve?
Yeah, I can repeat it if you'd like.
It was my
Sure.
question.
So it's basically, if you were executive director, what would you do to stop the continuous bleeding that we're seeing?
Well, okay. For one thing, I would institute at least one call-in show, because there's not enough interaction between the community and the station. And I know a lot of people who aren't crazy about the Sunday show, but they listen, particularly to listen to the call-ins, so that they know who else is out there and what they're thinking. I would say that I would propose that there be several call-in shows. Also, when there's some kind of emergency or extremely stressful issue, like when the decision came out about Michael Brown's murder in Ferguson, that's a time to throw open the phones. We had people marching by at KPFA on Martin Luther King Way, and KPFA was playing some programming that had nothing to do with it. So it seems like a no-brainer at a moment like that to open the phones, but there's no protocol for doing that. I think we should have a protocol for when some situation calls for opening the phones. And I think if they could interact with programming and with the station much more like that, people would be more likely to support it.
Thank you. Chris Corey, you have 90 seconds to answer your question.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank everybody for the replies. The one that I think came closest to what I would say would be Frank's reply. I think the basic idea is to try and increase listenership. And I understand that that's a very vague reply and that it doesn't have, it's not driven by specifics, but I think in order to explore that, the idea of that, we have to be as open-minded as possible. Like, for example, if there were a way to get our existing members to incentivize them to find new members. In other words, like a friends and family thing, that would be amazing, actually, because a lot of businesses dynamically operate in that way. They rely on their existing customers to act as their proponents to create, more quote customers, or in our case, listeners. So the one success story I would point to in the network is probably actually PFW. The way that they have actually grown revenues is by increasing their signal strength. Now, that's kind of something that not every station can do, but it's an example of what can happen when you actually get more listeners. They got it through a wider signal area. Other stations will have to find a better way, another way of doing that, because they don't have that option necessarily. But PFW's revenues have steadily increased over the last 4 years, and they are profitable now. They're gainful, in the words of nonprofits. And that's helpful to the network, of course, in a time when there's at least 2 stations who have consistently shown losses over the past several years and are basically creating a problem for the network. Thank you.
Stephen Thomas, what is your question for everybody? You may have to unmute yourself.
There we go. My question is to do with KPFA hasn't got any chairmanships on any committee on the national board. The national board seems to be dominated by WBAI, and it is the people running that station who took out the loan against KPFA and pledging assets to pay for ongoing operational losses is still a loser, even if you're extending it. I certainly agree that it's better to help all the other stations increase membership and help KPFA increase membership. And I'm willing to work with anybody who has a great idea about that stuff to do it. And it should be done. KPFA, I don't want to see it turn into NPR. I stopped listening to them a long time ago and only listen to KPFA. And, you know, it's about listenership, and this is community supported radio. That's where all the money comes from. And I don't want to see that change. And of course, we need to extend that. I've run into young Black guys who were doing music things who never heard of KPFA. I didn't get anybody's phone number, which is my mistake, but I think we can do a lot to reach out to younger people and their music and use the KPFA facilities to help them record or whatever. And I think that will help get us out to a broader community of younger listeners. I'm done.
So was that your question?
What was the question? Wait.
What was your question?
Well, it has to do with governorship of how the station is being run. And my concern is, why is the Pacifica National Board, who has less membership than KPFA, controlling the future of KPFA? It's sort of like this US Senate in Wyoming controlling California. And I think that's bad governance structure, which is why I voted for the bylaws change, because that would have corrected that. And a lot of people, I think, probably have not read the bylaws change and didn't understand that, although it does seem that a majority of everybody voted for them, except for WBAI, which is in control of the board and had they added a lot of new people, but it was their staff that voted down and made it so the majority of staff didn't vote for the bylaws change.
I'm sorry, but can we get a question?
Yeah.
This is
I was
just a
about to-
long speech. There's a long speech happening.
Yeah, so I think just to kind of correct for that, that will also kind of Stephen asked his question and made his comment to his question at the same time. So shall we move through this equally essentially we should move through addressing this topic. There are various questions.
Chair,
you know,
can I offer a question? In other words, can I ask Stephen whether the question as I phrased it in the chat works for him?
why does the PNB control KPFA without KPFA having any say?
I think that was the basic question.
Yes, KPFA has no seats on any committees or their committee chair on the PNB board.
Okay, so let's move through everybody commenting on this. Frank, you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, I'm not on the national board, so I'm a little unsure how nobody from KPFA has got onto, it sounds like a chair a committee or even on a committee. But I think we would have to, as a board, take that up with our national elected representatives. The KPFA LSB votes on their members to join the national board, and we get national reports when we have our LSB meetings. So it would be a time to take it up with them and ask them what's going on. Do I agree that another station should be controlling KPFA? I think as far as I understand it, they come up with policies and pass it down, and they vote on it. So I'm not sure a lot of what they have done that has stuck it to us. I know there's been a few, but yeah, not on the national boards. I can't speak to that as well. I would leave it to my national board representatives. I believe Chris is one, and our other ones are not on here. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Gendelman, you have 90 seconds.
Okay, thank you. And then after I answer, I have to run back into court. I would, as an example of what Stephen was talking about, the PNB recently decided to take away KPFA's ability to depreciate its own assets after KPFA being able to do that for at least the prior 30 years, which means that it was a dramatic change in the reporting of revenue, and it was a theft of KPFA's resources to attempt to cover the deficiencies, financial deficiencies of the rest of the stations in the network. And I think that there is, my experience when I was on the national board, and was that KPFA's success was a thorn in the side of the stations that were less successful. And the power on the national board was manipulated away from KPFA and its ability to control its own assets. And I'm going to mute myself and then leave the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for being willing to spend this time. I have to go back to work.
Thanks, Sherry.
Yeah, thanks.
And thank you, Sherry. Anthony Fest, you have 90 seconds.
Well, there's a siren going by. Each station has an equal number of seats on the national board. Each station has 4, 3 listeners and 1 staff seat on the national board. You may say that's inequitable, and I guess that can be argued. KPFK at one time had more subscribers than KPFA did slightly, and they've been unfortunately losing a lot of subscribers, like partly because of parting with Christine Blasdale, maybe as much or more than those other 2. But anyway, so each station is equally represented on the national board. Chairing a committee or chairing the PNB itself doesn't give that member any extra votes. And in fact, if you if you follow Robert's Rules of Order strictly, the chair of a committee or the body should not vote except to break a tie or make a tie, although oftentimes they do so anyway. But yeah, I mean, that's how the bylaws are written, four seats per station, and then the 2 affiliates. So we have equal numbers of seats. And having been the chair of the LSP years ago, I can tell you it's a lot of headaches and no more power than being a regular member of the LSP.
Thank you. And Garrison, you have 90 seconds. I think you're muted.
I think the PNB should have some authority, but of course it's not going to run the local stations. At one point in recent years, the PNB said that every station needed to have a program council. And that didn't happen because, as is often the case, well, at least it didn't happen at KPFA because management just decided to ignore it. There was another instance where the program that I work on, COVID Race and Democracy, was a pilot, more or less. And because it was an experiment of programming across the network, the PNB said that everybody had to air it once a week. But that was for a couple of months. After that was over, everyone could choose whether or not they wanted to keep carrying it. And 4 out of 5 stations did, KPFA did not. I think that's fair enough. But of course, the local station boards are gonna have far more control in other ways over what happens there at their local station.
Thank you. Chris Corey, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. This is actually a deceptively interesting question. I think the basic idea here is that, KPFA contributes 1/3 of the revenue to the network, yet has 0% of the power in the network, other than the sort of, the mundane level that could be taken at, which Anthony expressed, that we have people sitting and, keeping chairs warm for us at the PNB. I would, however, point out that I am actually chair of the coordinating committee, not to contradict the question entirely. I was actually given that seat by Dwayne Lark, who was vice chair of the PNB before he was replaced. So it's the simple answer to the question is that we don't have enough votes to get it. But that is also a deceptive answer in a way, in that it begs another question, and that is why. And that's a very complicated question that I can't possibly answer in 90 seconds. But the PNB is a political and dynamic organization that has a lot of allegiances within it. And currently, KPFA is not a part of the majority allegiance, is the somewhat more complicated answer to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move to Frank Sterling. What is your question for everybody?
Chris almost stole my question with this ED thing, but I think what we're all looking at is my question will be 2 parts. How do we grow our listenership and then therefore hopefully our membership, and how do we include young people in that growth? How do we get younger people listening to the station, and how do we grow our membership?
Thank you. Anthony Fest, you have 90 seconds.
Okay, let me give just one example. You've probably heard, and I've heard people say rather offhandedly, "Oh, young people don't listen to radio. They've got their phones." I hope that's not true. To the extent that is true, we've got to give them a reason to listen to radio. Here's an example, something I've thought of for a long time, but of course it's never been even attempted at implemented. Most large high schools have drama departments, and they'll put on a play or two in the school year. Imagine if the the cast of a certain production was invited to KPFA to perform part of their show for that season. The classmates would tune in, the parents would tune in, the administration would tune in, other young people from far beyond the area might tune in. Say it was Berkeley High Drama Club, but people could hear it as far away as Santa Rosa or Santa Cruz. So that's one possibility. And then that also serves another need, which is to start rebuilding the arts programming, which has been, ebbing away over the years, especially since Susan Stone departed. So that's one example. I'm sure I could come up with more, but I'm probably running out of time.
Thank you. And Garrison, you have 90 seconds. And you're muted.
Lost here listening, but I am listening. What's the answer again? What's the question again? Excuse me.
The question is, how do we grow our membership, our listenership, and hopefully our membership, and how do we include young people in that?
Okay, well, I'm going to repeat some of what I've said before about call-in shows. New media is interactive. When people get on Twitter and Facebook, they go to interact with a lot of people who are concerned with the same things that they're concerned on, or just have a good time. It's not somebody just talking at them. So I think call-in shows are one thing that we should be doing. And I would say a program council also involves the community more. And I think we should just think more about that. How do we directly interface with the community?
Thank you. Chris Corey? You have 90 seconds.
Yes, thank you. This question is kind of bordering on a programming question again. I did offer one suggestion for how we could increase listenership without getting into the programming side of the equation. But I think if you're in any sort of an enterprise, the best thing to do is to identify the target market and then to figure out what's successful out there, what people are doing. Now, as Anne said earlier, there's a bad way to do that. There's a way that is totally not in keeping with Pacifica to do that. I mean, we could absolutely go a route that would put us at complete odds with the mission of Pacifica. So identifying the target market and then forcing that through the mesh of our principles at Pacifica is the way forward. But I'm not going to pretend for a second to understand what that translates to in terms of programming. I'm hopeful that there are enough good heads in the organization that can figure that out. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Thomas, you have 90 seconds. I think you might be muted. Hello, hello.
I think now I'm unmuted.
Yes, you are.
One of the things I've mentioned to management before in emails is the possibility of using the KPFA Live Studio for reaching out to young people and giving them an opportunity to record their own music. And, depending on how it goes, maybe they let KPFA use it as premiums or whatever. Certainly, we need to expand membership and reach out to people. I think KPFA is already doing that fairly successfully. Not that it can't be improved, but using the facilities we have to help young people with new music and new bands get out to a new, younger audience is something that is seriously worth considering. And I'm open to any good ideas, and I'm happy to work with anybody who has good ideas, provided we can find common ground to work towards common goals. And certainly expanding membership and extending into a younger bunch of people is something that we really need to do, because a lot of KPFA members are older people, and as much as I love the programming, we do need to grow and expand. I'm done.
Thank you. Frank, you have 90 seconds to answer your own question.
All right. Yeah, I agree with Anthony. This is fun. So yeah, I feel like working with organizations like Sunrise Movement, 350.org, AROC, Palestinian Youth Organization, all these groups can be incorporated into already on-air programming, bringing more of these groups in that have already huge followings and getting them on the air more often, especially when they have huge direct action or movements happening, could be a force to grow our listenership. We could partner with them. Many of them, including AROC, are streaming online events. I've already asked the new development guy, I can't remember his name, to to help me partner with these organizations that are already broadcasting on their Facebook page or on their Twitter. They're doing these live streams of their events that we could be streaming those on kpfa.org without interrupting any programming. And that would help people drive to our website. Also, I put in the chat KPFA Apprentice WordPress Live Oak High School broadcast. That's one way I reached out to the youth. If you guys check out that link, just open it before we close down. You could see some of the pictures of the kids wearing the t-shirts, the KPFA shirts, the principal. There was also the parents in the audience. So we gave out t-shirts to the kids. We put the kids on the radio, told them that they were going to be on, what time, that all their friends would listen. So I think more of that would help. But I think my main thing is partnering with existing organizations such as AROC, 350.org, Palestinian Youth Organization, getting them more airtime on already existing shows and having them spread the word of the station that supports them. I'd also like to do when the COVID is over, on KPFA Day, possibly a rally in the park over there at Civic Center, Berkeley, where these organizations can come up and talk about how KPFA supported their work and why their organizations and their followers should support KPFA. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. We're running a bit past and Sherry left already. I'm wondering do you guys each want to make a closing statement, or do you want to shall we, it'll be another 5 minutes essentially. 5 minutes.
I'm up for a closing statement, Frank.
Closing. Okay. And how about everybody else?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, great. And shall we do 1 minute for the closing statements?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so we will start with Anthony. You have 1 minute to make a closing statement.
Okay, I may have mentioned before that under the present majority, the local station board has not been doing some of the most important duties it's tasked with by the bylaws, such as annual reviews of the general manager and the program director. I've raised this issue when I was on the board before, and if I'm elected to another term, I'll certainly raise it again. There's much more that needs to be done, of course. There ought to be a programmer's Bill of Rights. There needs to be new programs to serve the communities that are underrepresented or unrepresented on the air now. And there needs to be a return to a democratic process for choosing programs. We need to figure out where radio is going in the years ahead, how it's going to stay relevant. So we need to, figuratively speaking, push the door open and let the community back in. I'm Anthony Fest. Please vote for me for the local station board. Also, please vote for Frank Sterling and Ann Garrison. Thank you.
Thank you. And Garrison, you have 1 minute. Please unmute.
I think again that we need to increase community participation in any number of ways, one by call-ins, one by being involved with events, as Franklin was saying. I've been watching a lot of Rockfin podcasts lately, and they not only have a stream, but they have a comment stream. And the people who are podcasting are responding to what people say in the comments. I mean, interactivity is a lot of what the web is about, what web-based media is about. And that's one of the things that KPFA is very behind on. Nobody even leaves comments on the website. It's almost never does anyone leave a comment on programming and start a discussion. I think there should be a program council. And and I think you should use ranked choice voting to vote for Frank first, Anthony second, and myself third. I have to relearn the logic of ranked choice voting every time it comes around. But that's the most efficient way to do it. I'll just say, if you would like any or all of us to be elected.
Thank you. Chris Corey, you have 1 minute.
Okay. I joined the board to help put our house in order. It was suggested that I come to Pacifica because of my background, which is primarily in music and finance. And it took me 2 years just to understand the organizational structure of Pacifica. But I now feel that not only do I understand it, but I have a pretty good idea of how to fix it. The only question that remains is whether my voice will be loud enough within the organization to actually do that. But I hope that you will vote for me so that I can take this opportunity. This is my last term on the LSB and at the PNB, if I am so granted that position before I term out, and I hope you will honor me with your vote. This is Chris Corey. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Thomas, you have 1 minute.
I think Chris makes a lot of sense, as does Sherry. And I've been involved in politics. I want to work with anybody where we have mutual goals that we can work to achieve. When I was calling just to talk to listeners about voting for the listener candidates, I had one guy tell me, "You guys always bicker. Screw all of you. I'm not voting." That's not productive. I want to see KPFA thrive. I want to see Pacifica thrive. And I fix stuff for a living. That's what I do. I do root cause analysis by nature, and I like to solve problems. I think we can do this together. I would appreciate your vote as a staff candidate for the local station board. And I will do everything I can to make sure that KPFA thrives and survives and continues community outreach and increases listenership.
Thank you. Frank Sterling, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, this is Frank Sterling. I'm hoping for your vote for the KPFA local station board. I'm also running with Anthony Fest and Ann Garrison. I hope you will rank us 1, 2, 3 on your ranked choice voting. I believe in keeping the network together. I would look forward to working with financial minds such as Chris and other folks on the board. And what I would like to bring is community connections. I got a lot of connections in the activist community from my reporting and from my work. And I feel like they can help us grow our network, help us grow our membership, and help us bring young people in at the same time. And I'd be willing to work hard to bring those voices to the air, and also continue my committee work, bringing a programmer's bill of rights that would help put out some steps that people can take to help make their show better. Work that will lay out the process of how a show is evaluated, eliminated, or moved. So again, Frank Sterling, please vote for me for the local station board, along with Ann Garrison and Anthony Fest. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So yeah, so I guess we're going